The following podcast is an exclusive presentation of Project Entertainment Network.
Thank you for coming to the Project Entertainment Network store. Please place your order. A good choice. A t-shirt for the horror show with Brian Keene. Amanda Method coffee mug. There's more. A Necrocastic on hoodie. That's sharp. But why on earth would you want Bizong leggings? Wait, are you Mr. Frank? The Project Entertainment Network store, stacked with goodies from all your favorite podcasts. T-shirts, hoodies, mugs and more. www.projectentertainmentnetwork.com.
There shall come a podcast like no other. Defenders Dialogue with Brian Keene and Christopher Golden. Marvel Comics' original superhero non-team convenes once again. The Incredible Hulk, the Savage Submariner, the Master of the Mystic Arts, Doctor Strange, and a dynamic supporting cast of Marvel superheroes battle against evil as the Defenders. Without further ado, true believers, here's your hosts, Brian Keene and Christopher Golden. Excelsior!
And welcome back once again, true believers, to Defenders Dialogue. I'm Brian Keene.
And I'm Christopher Golden. And Brian, Excelsior for the 51st time.
Excelsior for the 51st time. That's right. Last week's episode was our 50th anniversary issue. And
Exactly.
I didn't realize that until after we'd recorded it.
Yep. And I think next week should be Assistant Editors Month. But anyway, and only old Marvelites will know what that even means.
Exactly. It's like the Marvel value stamps. Either you grew up in that era,
right,
and you remember it.
Either you know what that means or you don't.
Exactly.
I don't even think we should explain it.
I don't think we should either.
Although I confess I don't think I ever knew what the Marvel value stamps were good for, but they were cool.
I only knew that they were cool, and that when I would buy comics at yard sales, they were often cut out. There was nothing
that pissed me off more than picking up a comic and finding that the Marvel value stamp had been had been ripped out or cut out, completely ruining the comic.
Yeah, but ostensibly you could collect them all into a stamp album that Marvel provided, and then you could turn them back in for prizes and things. But I don't know that anybody ever did that. I did see a Marvel value stamp album complete on eBay last year, and it went for more money than you and I make in a year. But boy, that would have been really cool to have.
Oh, that's just too much money.
Yeah.
What now? I'm trying to think about. Did you ever write a letter to a Marvel comic when you were a kid?
I did.
I think we might have talked about that. What was that?
I never got one published, but I wrote to the Defenders because I too was not satisfied with Ed Hannigan's run. I wrote to Godzilla when Marvel was publishing Godzilla, and I wrote to Rom, Space Knight. Remember him?
I do.
Yeah, I wrote into Rom, and I requested that they give Torpedo his own issue with, because in the pages of the Hulk, sometimes Doc Samson would get his own issue and the Hulk wouldn't be in it. And I thought they should do the same thing in Rom with Torpedo, who I always thought was a very cool character, very underused.
Now, excuse me, is Torpedo the guy in the blue costume?
Yep.
With the ridiculous armband things that are...
Yep, ridiculous armband things.
And ridiculous headgear.
Yep.
Yeah. And then his sister becomes Turbo or something, right?
Right, exactly, yep.
Yeah, I'm not surprised they didn't print that letter that you wrote, because they probably went, what the fuck is wrong with this kid?
Well, see, and that's the problem with modern day Marvel. They didn't use any of my ideas, and now we have an entire
Is that the problem?
We have a generation of millennials who've never heard of Skull Slayer or Torpedo, and they wouldn't have heard of Elf with a Gun if not for this show.
Well, I mean, the good news is you do have a secret Marvel project in the offing.
I do. I can't talk about it. Unfortunately, it's with two characters that everybody knows and loves. So
that's good. That's important.
But I may see if I can sneak, Yandroth or somebody like that into the project.
If you don't have at least one member of the Headmen in there, I will I will be so disappointed in you. I think we should just see, who would be the least likely. The Egghead would be easy, but you need to sneak in. What's the name of the dude with the gorilla body again?
Oh,
Dr.
Negan.
Negan, yeah.
Gorilla Man is his supervillain name, but everybody just calls him Negan.
It's incumbent upon you to put him in that project.
They used him not so long ago when Dan Abnett was writing the new Guardians of the Galaxy. They had Gorilla Man for 3 issues, and he was written very well.
Well, listen, Dan Abnett is a terrific writer, but clearly also has terrible taste in character.
Well, you know who's a great writer and does not have terrible taste in characters? That is J.M. DeMatteis.
I knew you were looking for the segue to get us talking about our actual subject here.
I'm excited to talk about these 2 issues today. Defenders 120 and 121. If you are a Bronze Age Marvel fan, like Chris and myself, this is pretty much the Son of Satan's last stand. This is his big final battle, and then he wouldn't be used again until the 90s when Warren Ellis brought the character back.
Yeah, I mean it's quality stuff. You know what's really interesting though, Brian? And I know you're going to think I'm a little crazy here, but I have memories of a Daimon Hellstrom, Patsy Walker story that I don't think is from the Warren Ellis run of Hellstorm, but that I thought happened in these pages that doesn't.
Yeah?
So I think this is, again, evidence that we're living in a parallel reality. I read those comics in the Berenstein Bears reality.
Could it have been in an issue of what was the tryout book that Marvel did? Had the Wolverine story that ran, and
Marvel Comics Presents?
Yeah, could it have been something that was serialized in that?
I think it was probably too good to have been in that.
Because I mean there is a huge continuity jump, and I'm gonna spoil things here, Defenders listeners. Very soon here, Daimon and Patsy will resolve their issues and will in fact ride off into the sunset together in the pages of the Defenders. However, when Warren Ellis reintroduces the character in the 90s, he has his Darksoul back, and Patsy's basically abused by Daimon, and Gargoyle is like his sidekick and like the Alfred to his Bruce Wayne, and he's sort of abusive to Gargoyle too, and it's tonally it's so jarring from everything that J.M. DeMatteis does.
Yeah,
I feel like there must have been a side story.
Or maybe not. Maybe I just hallucinated it. Or it is from that parallel dimension. But I think eventually we should get back and do Warren Ellis's run.
You know what? I will email Warren this week, and I will ask him, was there something you based that on, or did you just decide to be a dick and undo everything that has done?
Yeah, I think we have to do that. All right, so Defenders 120, written by DeMatteis, penciled, I think, in one of his better issues by Don Perlin, inked by Abel DeMulder and Muschinsky. We open, well, the title of this issue is Sanctuary. We open with Daimon trekking across the snow with his collar up, unshaven, to what appears to be a rectory or abbey of some kind, and pounding on the doors, Brian.
That's right.
And this I imagine is an episode in the life of Brian Keene. I feel like there's you returning to you sort of have this aura of this era Daimon Hellstrom, early John Constantine in my brain.
You know, it's funny you mentioned that. I was rereading these issues this morning, and I turned to Mary San Giovanni, and I said, I missed all this subtext when I was reading this at age 16. And she said, what subtext? And I said, just what Daimon is going through here on the page. And I didn't elaborate, but yeah, I've been where he is. I mean, when we last saw him, he was in Georgetown. He was having a crisis of conscience. He didn't know who he was anymore. And who we're seeing now is a broken man in every sense of the word. I have had this long dark tea time of the soul myself, and I do not envy our favorite defender here.
Yeah. Yep. So he pounds on the door, and the door is opened by a priest. It's a monastery, actually. Yes, and Daimon says, the priest says, "How are you feeling, child?" The priest, by the way, is dressed sort of in monk's robes, and he is named Father Gossett.
That's right. And what we come to find out, and I don't remember him from the Son of Satan solo series, but we come to find out that he was a mentor to Daimon long before he became a parapsychologist, long before he joined the university at Georgetown. This Father Gossett mentored him and offered him spiritual advice, and was the first human being to help Daimon come to terms with the dark soul that inhabits him, and the fact that he is, in fact, the son of Satan.
Right, and also, so Hellstrom began his adult life in the seminary, intending to become a priest. And then he veered away from that. He left the cloistered life behind. But anyway, he comes back and he says, "Look, I need you."
There's another weird bit of I once considered going to seminary, not Catholic. It would have been Protestant seminary, but because I thought that would be a good job to have as a grown up, because it seemed to me you could make a lot of money and meet a lot of girls. This was in the 80s.
This is not the thing that if young men are considering the seminary, it's not usually because they think they can make a lot of money and meet a lot of girls.
Well, like I said, it would have been Protestant seminary, and they had one here in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, and I really thought about it, but then it was the 80s, and all these television evangelists started getting busted, and I thought, well, that would happen to me, so.
Okay. In any case, Hellstrom says, and I think intriguingly, he basically is saying to the priest, "Look, I've kind of worked it out, or I thought I had worked it out, but now I don't know who I am. I have, after the doppelganger issue of the last doppelganger situation in the last issue, Hellstrom has come to realize that he has been pretty good at being the son of Satan, but doesn't know how to be Daimon Hellstrom." And he says to Father Gossett, "There's a woman I've fallen in love with, a woman named Patsy Walker, who's touched me as no other soul has before, but how can I offer myself to her if I don't know who I am?" And then Father Gossett alludes to the famous quote from Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, talking about how two sides of his nature are at war, of Daimon's nature is at war. And he's trying to comfort him, and Hellstrom's like, "Wait, let me just show you what you're dealing with." And he transforms into the son of Satan in full dark soul sort of rage.
Right. I'm sorry. As we're talking, Mary San Giovanni was leaving in the background, so I was waving bye to her.
Everyone listening can mentally say farewell to Mary.
Yeah. He's full dark soul, and I agree with you. This is some of Perlin's best line work. I mean, he really looks terrifying in that panel.
Yeah, and there's also in the next panel when, Father Gossett is trying to soothe him. He's saying, "Look, you're not a fool, you're a man, anguished, tormented, but a man whose soul I know almost as well as my own, a man I love and believe in, and you must believe as well if you are ever to find yourself." And then Hellstrom throws himself on his knees, holding on to the priest's hands, and says, "Father, help me believe." And
right.
and there's the priest has a big crucifix on. There's an enormous crucifix on the wall behind in this sort of simple chamber, illuminated by candlelight. And it's definitely it's the moment where he is just thrown himself completely open. He's bereft of any ability to help himself. And tellingly, Brian, the caption on the next page says, "A new dawn."
That's right. And when we see Daimon, he's wearing monk's robes, and he meets another young monk in training named Brother Joshua. Now, spoiler warning, Brother Joshua has appeared very briefly on this podcast. I'm not going to tell you his real identity. We'll get to that later. Mm-hmm. But you weren't on that episode, Chris. It was one of the solo episodes that I did. But yeah, Brother Joshua, it turns out, came to the monastery with amnesia. He doesn't know who he is or where he comes from, and the monks have been helping him. And as he and Daimon are talking, they step outside, and we see that this is a place of peace. There are rabbits and deer eating out of a trough, and as the two approach, Daimon pets the deer, and suddenly the deer is startled, and it goes running away, and they wonder what frightened her.
Now I want to point something out here, Brian.
Okay.
And that is that as masterful an artist as Perlin proves himself to be in this issue, there is one problem that I think in the days of the Marvel No Prize, I would have liked to have written in and explained that there's some alien or supernatural force at work here. Because Brother Joshua has a bald spot that continually migrates from one location to another on his head.
This is true. This is very true. Now, this was
depending on the panel, the bald spot is in a different location. But go ahead.
This is pre-Secret Wars. But is it possible that Brother Joshua's bald spot is the alien symbiote known as Venom?
It is entirely possible. It's a very strange, Rorschach-ian thing that's going on with his bald spot. But anyway, the deer, it takes off. Obviously, we the readers are aware that the deer has been scared off by Daimon Hellstrom.
But it hasn't. See, I read that very differently.
You think it's been scared off by Brother Joshua?
Yeah, if you look in the panels, when Damon's petting the deer, it doesn't react.
Oh, you're right.
Joshua touches the deer.
You're right. Look at that. Well, I quit. I'm clearly not cut out for this business.
All right, let Snagowski know. He's going to
All right. Then we cut to, and I have something to say about this scene too. Go ahead, set the scene, Brian.
Well, we go back to the Upper West Side brownstone in New York City. That is the home and headquarters to 4 of the dynamic Defenders. There's a screech, and Valkyrie, Gargoyle, the Beast, and Dolly run into Patsy Walker's room.
Now, this is what I want to know. So Patsy is sitting in bed, clutching the sheets as the others come in. And by the way, Gargoyle's bedclothes are hysterical to me. He's got a nightcap like he's just been cast in 'Twas the Night Before Christmas.
But that's the era he grew up in.
I know, it's funny, but what I want to say is that Patsy is wearing, now this is the mid-'80s. Patsy is wearing a sort of sexy, lacy, maybe silk nightgown of some kind that did women ever wear these things?
Sure. Mary wears these to bed. Really? Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's okay. Right. Brian Keene, motherfucker.
I look at it, it just seems like a throwback to another era.
See, I think it's very telling that Perlin drew them. I mean, you think about Pat.
Wait, let me interrupt you for a second. This is my question. I wish Mary had not left.
Okay.
Because my question to Mary would be, does she wear them when you're not there?
That's a good question.
So Patsy is on her own here.
Given that I do the laundry, and given that we often have different travel schedules, I would say yes, she is wearing them when I'm not here.
Okay.
But I see it as each of them are wearing pajamas befitting who they are. Patsy, you got to remember, before she became a superheroine, she was a model.
Yeah.
You know, she was in fact a sex symbol.
Yes.
So, you know, and Valkyrie is wearing like this Asgardian pajama setup.
Yeah, and has her sword in hand.
Yeah, Hank, you know, he's wearing the bathrobe and slippers, befitting someone of his intellect. You know, Dolly's got her hair up in curl. I think this works, all of this.
Okay, all right, I'm with you. Anyway, so Patsy Walker has had a dream that is also a premonition that Dame, now that her psychic powers are beginning to return, and we have more of that as we go forward, she's had a premonition that Daimon is in trouble. And they sort of poo-pooed a little bit, and she's like, no, you guys, you have to listen to me. There's something going on. We cut back to the monastery 3 days later.
Right.
Hellstrom is working on the engine of a tractor, which is something we have no reason to think that he would have that skill, but okay. But I guess, when you've spent your days in contact with psychosensitive nether metal or whatever, you just like the Trident, he's capable of anything.
And then Father Gossett approaches, and they get into a conversation, and we find out that Father Gossett is unsure about Brother Joshua. There's something about him that he just can't quite put his finger on.
Right. And we cut back to New York City, where at the YMCA, working out in public with the hoi polloi all around them, Patsy Walker and Hank McCoy are playing on the gymnastics equipment, honing their skills. And as they're doing that, Hank is sort of again kind of dismissing her concerns about Hellstrom in a very mansplaining kind of way, in a beast-splaining kind of way. And she says, look, I've had this dream 3 nights in a row. If your old X-Men mentor, Professor Xavier, had told you the same thing, wouldn't you be the least bit worried? And then he realizes, you know what? You're right. Doctor Strange is off on a vampire hunt, which is interesting.
That was in the pages of Doctor Strange issue 59, true believers.
Exactly. But we should look into this. And then meanwhile, elsewhere, and I love this bit, Valkyrie is lifting weights, and these two guys, two muscleheads, are looking on, sort of mocking her, like she's really going to lift that 350 pounds. And then, of course, she picks it up and she spins it over her head with one hand.
Yep.
Yeah. So yes, she gets very angry with him, and she wraps the bell. The bell. I can't even speak today.
The barbell.
Yes, thank you. She wraps the barbell around him, in a scene reminiscent of multiple issues of Power Man and Iron Fist.
Right. We then transition back to the monastery. It's midnight. Everyone's asleep except for Daimon, who, for the first time in over 10 years, is kneeling in prayer, asking God, the biblical God, for help, for guidance. Now think about that. This is the son of Satan praying to his father's adversary for help and guidance. He wants a sign, and he gets a sign. He begins to have what feels like a heart attack in the chest. And he then notices a light in the monastery, and he rushes downstairs to the source of the light, and he finds that the light is coming from Brother Joshua, who was also kneeling in prayer. And when he goes to interrupt Joshua reacts. He's startled, and a blast of energy flies out of his hand. And he apologizes to Daimon and says, I don't know what's happening to me. Please don't tell anybody. And Daimon says, I won't. Perhaps we can figure out what's happening to you together.
Right
Daimon
now,
takes this for the sign that God has sent him.
Exactly. Now, I do want to point out that we have reached this page wherein Brother Joshua's migrating bald spot has vanished entirely, and he now has a full head of hair. So, make of that what you will. We go back to New York, to the Greenwich Village sanctum of the Sorcerer Supreme, Doctor Strange, of course, who is not there because he's hunting vampires. The Overmind, however, is there, and he is trying to sift through, or they, the Overmind, are trying to sift through the vibrations in the psychic ether, using Patsy as their focus, trying to figure out what the link is between Daimon and her. And then, out of the blue, psychic energy bursts out of Patsy and hits the Overmind. The Overmind says, wow, that was quite formidable. The psionic feedback caused us much pain, but we were able to unveil a location, a direction to follow. So now Patsy also recognizes where they're supposed to go, to Massachusetts, and they bid Wong farewell and they leave.
Right.
We're back at the monastery, Brian.
And Brother Joshua is getting baptized.
Yeah, he's taking his vows.
That's right.
To become a monk full time. Will you live out your days in this monastery? Live for God alone in solitude and silence, faithful unto death. I will, says Brother Joshua. Rise, Brother Joshua, as one of us. Rise, Abbot. Yes, I have risen, but not, I fear, as you believe.
Because he suddenly remembers who he is. The ceremony has awoken it inside of him. And Brother Joshua is none other than the Miracle Man. Now, as I said, we talked about him many episodes ago when I did a solo show covering The Thing and Valkyrie teaming up in Marvel 2-in-1. He was a subplot. The Miracle Man, he's mostly a Fantastic Four villain, but I think Fantastic Four and Marvel 2-in-1 are the only places he has appeared. But, J.M. DeMatteis is now repurposing him for this, the Defenders. And basically, he in previous incarnations, he ran a religious cult. He wanted to set himself up to be a god. And, that is his true identity, the Miracle Man. And he tells them, I am your master. He beckons with his hands, and the monks who were standing one story above on the balcony watching his baptism suddenly plummet to the ground. You would think Hellstrom would react, but he's busy having another one of those mysterious heart attacks.
Yes. Well, he tries to get up, tries to face it, and he allows the Darksoul to take him over. He faces Brother Joshua, the Miracle Man, who actually then transforms all the monks into dust, statues, really, which infuriates Daimon Hellstrom's Darksoul even more. He fires, what does he fire, Brian? He fires hellfire from the psychosensitive nether metal of his trident. But the Miracle Man seems to just absorb it. He's feasting on it.
Yeah, in fact, he says, Daimon says, taste my soul fire and fall. Taste it. Don't you understand yet, Hellstrom? I am feasting upon it.
Then Hellstrom tries to attack him with the trident. The Miracle Man grabs it. And as they battle over the trident, the tattoo upon Daimon Hellstrom's chest of the inverted star begins to fade and then vanishes entirely, only to reappear on the chest of the Miracle Man, Brian.
That's right. And what we come to find out, what we understand is that Daimon's own Darksoul has betrayed him. It led him here to this monastery, to Brother Joshua, and it has fled from Daimon into a better host. This is, Chris, we
into a host more likely to give it what it wants.
Yeah, we talk a lot about duality in writing and especially when it comes to anti-heroes, characters like the Punisher or, Walt on Breaking Bad. This is like if all of Tony Soprano's bad parts left him and transferred into, I don't know, Big Pussy or another character, and all you were left with was
Christopher,
Tony Soprano, Family Man. I just wanted to say Big Pussy on the air. But yeah, Daimon Hellstrom is no longer a complete individual. His hellish side has left him, abandoned him for Brother Joshua.
Which one would think would be for the best in many ways.
You would think. But meanwhile, high above New York City, we see an Avengers Quinjet. Are the Avengers inside? No. It's the Defenders. It's the Beast, Valkyrie, Hellcat, Gargoyle, and Overmind, rushing to help their friend.
Leading directly into Defenders 121, which is titled Savior, which is credited to J.M. DeMatteis as scripter, Don Perlin penciler, but they're both credited for the plot, which I think is interesting.
I do too.
So we're back in that Avengers Quinjet. I'll just sum this up quickly. They're flying to the rescue to the location that Patsy and Overmind have identified. And as they're flying, giant statues of monks appear and block their way. And everywhere the Beast turns flying the Quinjet, the statues appear till he finally crashes them into the snow.
That's right. But if giant statues weren't enough, as the Defenders abandon the crashed Quinjet, giant Godzilla-sized ice monsters appear.
And then we'll just make quick work of this. As the Defenders make quick work of the ice creatures, there's a lot of dialogue, a lot of stuff going on, but in the end, they're able to destroy it. Hank McCoy, Brian, there's a little hint here as to things to come, because Hank McCoy is talking about how if the Avengers or X-Men had been as sloppy as this bunch, we'd all have been killed. He's basically like, we're supposed to be a team. And Valkyrie chides him and says, if we have need of a leader, don't you think Brunhilde would be a more appropriate choice than you? So she's sort of irritated with his presumptuousness.
And she has a point. And spoiler warning to listeners, this is setting up a huge change in the status quo. But as she points out, for 121 issues, the Defenders have battled without rules, regulations, charters, or leaders. And she's absolutely right. I mean, right. Doctor Strange, sort of the de facto leader, Nighthawk, de facto leader for a while, Valkyrie herself, but it's never been official. Right. But that's going to change.
Yep. Very interesting. So they get to the monastery. The door mysteriously swings open on its own. They enter to find the Miracle Man, has become essentially the host. He's become the leader of the monastery, and the monks are sitting down for a meal as if nothing strange is happening, even though these 5 Defenders have just come bursting in.
That's right. They demand to know where Daimon is, and he says, he's right there, and we find out that he's turned Daimon into a statue.
Yeah. I'm afraid I had no recourse but to change him into that statue. And the Beast says, you what? So basically, he says, no, that's okay, I can fix it. And he changes both Father Gossett and Hellstrom back into humans.
And this is my favorite scene in this issue, in this episode. Daimon changes from a stone statue back to flesh and blood, and he topples forward. And Patsy rushes to him and says, Daimon, are you all right? And his response is, no, I'm not all right.
It's great. He's like, of course I'm not all right. Well, in any case, then he gives them a little bit of info about what got them here, and the Miracle Man politely stands by and lets him explain, and then explains a little bit more himself. And he says, I freely admit, this is the Miracle Man. The sudden surge of my returning powers resulted in a momentary mental imbalance. Thus my attacks on the monks and on you Defenders. But I swear I have found an inner balance. I see now that I've been handed the ability to mold this world to my will. And that's what he wants to do.
That's right. He doesn't want to subjugate the earth. He wants to liberate it.
He says. Don't they always say that?
Well, that's what I always say.
In any case,
teleports all of the Defenders to Java, Indonesia, one of the most poverty-stricken places on the planet, at least back in the 80s when this was written.
He also, Hellstrom shows them that he now has the Darksoul. And basically he says, look, I'm more suited to this Darksoul. I can control this raging entity within me and bend it to my will. And Hellstrom's like, we got to bring this guy down. But the Defenders are like, well, he hasn't actually done anything yet. So they're observing as he's asked them. Miracle Man has said, give me a moment, see what I can do.
Yeah, I mean, he tells them, look, these people suffer. There's malnutrition, no housing, no electricity, no running water, and he wants to change things for them. And he does. He transforms Java into paradise. And we get this really well written dialogue between the Overmind and Valkyrie.
A sort of philosophical argument.
Yeah, where they're debating. The Overmind is impressed and all for this. They say to Valkyrie, listen to the joyous cries of the people. And Valkyrie explains to the Overmind, you're young in many ways. Asgard's Lord Odin could have done this, but, the gods learned long ago that man must make his own heaven. To have it imposed upon him from without results only in chaos and in death.
There you go. So the Miracle Man has a line of people coming to be healed. He's able to heal them. A guy on crutches who has legs that don't work approaches and he's healed immediately. And then the Miracle Man goes up to an old man who's blind.
That's right.
And he says, "Don't be afraid, old one. I have but to place my hands upon your brow, and your blindness shall be lifted." But the old man rejects that gift. "I have embraced the fate the gods have bestowed upon me. To take your healing would be to deny their will." This infuriates the Miracle Man, Brian.
He says, "Their will."
The idea that he would surrender himself, exactly.
Yeah, he snaps his fingers, and now not only is the old man blind, but now he can't walk either. And the Miracle Man demands that he beg for his touch. And the old man stands firm. He says, "I will not."
Yep.
And, the Darksoul inhabiting the Miracle Man comes to the forefront, at which point the defenders see, oh, yeah, okay, wow, Hellstrom's right after all.
Yes, exactly. They realize that they have to step in. The Overmind decides that they must put a swift end to this insanity and uses their sort of psychic powers to launch an attack on the Miracle Man. However, the Miracle Man is able to spit that power back in the Overmind's face. The Valkyrie attacks. It's just sort of one thing after another as the defenders continue to attack. The only one not attacking, Brian, is Daimon Hellstrom.
That's right. He watches as Gargoyle attacks what he thinks is the Miracle Man, but it turns out the Miracle Man cast an illusion, and what Gargoyle did is he actually attacked the Beast and Hellcat. At which point we get one of my favorite sequences with the Gargoyle.
Me too.
DeMatteis has very rightfully so been writing him as this World War I era old man trapped in this demon's body.
A gentle soul.
Yeah, a gentle, kind soul. Even more of a throwback to a different era than Steve Rogers. But with this revelation, Isaac Christian snaps. And he is the motherfucking Gargoyle.
That's the new series. That's the title of the new series from Marvel, The Motherfucking Gargoyle.
That's right. And he actually, we see him do something he's never done in the pages of the Defenders. He actually throws a punch and connects and surprisingly hurts the Miracle Man. This being of almost unlimited power is shocked. He says, "You hurt me." And then he turns Isaac into an actual gargoyle, a stone gargoyle.
Exactly. And then he actually removes the paradise so that not only is the earth shaking, there's an earthquake going on, the skies darken, lightning comes out, but the paradise has now been sort of transformed. It's starting to crumble, basically. And then it's just up to Daimon Hellstrom without his dark soul. He's just a guy now in a funny costume, facing off against the Miracle Man who has his dark soul in him. And then here's what happens, Brian. Daimon Hellstrom is not speaking to the Miracle Man. He's appealing directly to the dark soul itself, saying, "Hey, guy, guess what? That guy you're inside right now, he's human. And he might be powerful right now, but eventually you're going to burn him out. You weren't made to inhabit a human. You were made to inhabit a son of Satan, because I will not burn out as your host. You need to come back to me." And the dark soul speaks for itself. what do you promise in exchange for my return? And Daimon Hellstrom promises that he will give in to the Darksoul.
That's right.
He gives his inviolable word that he shall never deny the Darksoul again. But watching this exchange is Patsy Walker.
That's right. And she decides she can't let him do this. She loves him. And she telepathically reaches out to Overmind. And she tells them that, they have to do something. And the Overmind says, we are too drained. We do not have the power. And she says, don't give me excuses. Just link up your minds to hers. And as the Darksoul departs from the Miracle Man and heads toward Daimon Hellstrom, the Overmind and Patsy lash out with their telepathic powers and trap it. And it transforms into a serpent, the serpent of old, all the way back to Eden, and slithers away.
And then, there's an explosion, and basically Gargoyle says, where are we? Back at the monastery, the Overmind says, with the Darksoul torn from his body, Joshua's mind collapsed inwards, and the effects of all his miracles were reversed. And yet Daimon does not have the Darksoul. What did you and the Overmind do? Where is it? Where it belongs, Daimon, where it belongs. And we see the serpent slithering through the grass. So the son of Satan's Darksoul is out there as a serpent in the world, slithering around somewhere. But we did have this moment where the Hellcat and the Overmind prevented the Darksoul from reaching its destination, and it actually fell into the serpent that was already there, Brian. So it inhabited that. They trapped it inside the serpent's body instead of allowing it to get back to Daimon Hellstrom's body.
Exactly.
And that's where we leave off for the moment.
That's where we leave off. Now, the holidays are upon us, so we want to update you listeners on what you can expect here on the show. Next week, I'm gonna do a solo show. We've been meaning to get back around to Marvel Team Up 119, which is Spider-Man and Gargoyle. I think it's one of J.M. DeMatteis's best single issues from his entire career. And it's been referenced here on this show, but we just haven't covered it. And then also Marvel Team Up 126, which is Luke Cage and the Son of Satan teaming up. So we're going to do those next week, and then Chris and I will be back, the week after that for New Year's?
For New Year's Day, we will have we will continue on in the regular run of the Defenders. And very soon, friends and neighbors, we will be transitioning into the new Defenders, which is...
That's right.
There's no renumbering. It continues the run of the Defenders. It continues the numbers. But the title of the series changes to the new Defenders, starting with issue 125. So we're almost there.
Yep. So in the meantime, if you enjoy our show, please consider supporting our network, the Project Entertainment Network. They bring you this show and 20 other fantastic podcasts weekly. The best way to do that is to give them $1 a month on Patreon. That's all you have to do, just $1 a month. And with that, you get access to exclusive episodes that you can't hear anywhere else. So go to patreon.com and look for the Project Entertainment Network. Chris, anything you want to tell folks before we leave? Anything you'd like to wish them other than, of course, happy holidays?
Well, I was going to say, actually, that I wish you and everyone out there a happy solstice, a happy holidays in general, and Merry Christmas to those who celebrate. We've already passed Hanukkah, but I hope people had a happy Hanukkah. More than anything, I wish people, we'll talk about this a little bit on New Year's Day, I wish people a quiet and peaceful end of December, beginning of the winter season, because this tends to be a difficult time for some people, and I hope everybody finds a little peace. And you know what, Brian? You know what the one-word translation of all that sentiment is?
What would that word be?
Excelsior!
Excelsior indeed, true believers. We'll see you next time,
You're
folks.
listening to American Top 40. More tragedy in the news today. Kim Kardashian has a new baby. What the hell? There's nothing good to listen to.
The price is wrong.
Hey, wait, what's this?
Anything moist. You gotta roll that out.
See, it makes me I'd be going down on myself.
Shit.
Hey guys, it's Bill
Mick.
Maya.
And Junior.
from the Unsupervised Podcast.
Check us out every Thursday on the Project Entertainment Network.
Take a break from the stress of the world and come have a laugh with or at us.
Bill.
My Favorite Story, a podcast author anthology featuring short fiction from the hosts of the Project Entertainment Network shows.
Three guys with beards. Jim Moore, Jonathan Maybar, and Chris Golden.
Tom Clark from Necrocast, Daimon,
Brian Keene of The Horror Show. Chuck Buda, and Armand Rosamilia of The Mando Method.
Mary San Giovanni of Cosmic Shenanigans.
Jay Wilburn from Matters of Faith.
John Urban-Sick of Ink Stains.
Biz Zung's Mr. Frank.
Available on Kindle and in paperback and through the Project Entertainment Network store.
www.projectentertainmentnetwork.com.
This has been an exclusive presentation of the Project Entertainment Network.